Angelina Neiberger. Welcome to the Physician Assistant Forum.
Thank you for having me.
And tell me about yourself.
So I'm Angelina. I'm a new grad PA that started working at Duke's Department of Neurosurgery in December of last year.
Wow. So what was your undergrad before you went to PA school?
So I went to Davidson College and I studied biology and minored in health and human values.
Oh, okay. So how did you know about the PA profession and what influenced to become a PA?
I knew about the PA profession kind of early on because my primary care provider was a PA. And when I started Davidson, I was kind of torn between maybe going into teaching, but I also really like sciences. And once I started school at Davidson, I had the opportunity to shadow several different healthcare providers, that being an MD, NP, and PA. And the PA who I shadowed was really influential for me into pursuing the PA profession.
Oh, interesting. So after your undergraduate degree, what all did you do to become eligible to apply for the PA program, like the prerequisites and all that stuff?
So I knew I wanted to go to PA school fairly early on in college, so I really wanted to try to go without taking a gap year. So while I was at undergrad, I just basically made a list of schools and programs that I was interested in, and I looked at what prerequisites they required, and I started taking them. So over the summer in between my sophomore and junior year, I did my anatomy and physiology with lab, and most of my undergrad classes covered what was required for PA school since I was a bio major.
Oh, that's smart. What do you mean by gap year? For viewers who don't know what that means.
So a lot of people end up taking a year in between, college and PA school to either take classes that are required for PA school or to get some healthcare experience, and that time allows them to pursue that.
Oh, okay. So you went straight through. You didn't take a break.
Yes, I did not take a break
Smart.
in between.
But once you finished undergrad, was there any time in between you finished your your undergrad and started PA school?
I had a week and a half in between.
Wow.
So pretty fast.
That is impressive, and that's unbelievable. Because a lot of people will have at least a month break in between.
Yeah. My program started at the end of May, and since I graduated middle of May, I basically just moved down and started PA school immediately.
Oh, okay. Well, almost all PA programs require a certain number of healthcare hours to be even eligible to apply for the program. And since you didn't have a job and from undergrad you went to PA school, how did you manage to get your 1,000 to 1,500 healthcare hours that are prerequisites for most of the programs?
Well, the one thing was that my programs and the ones that I applied to, a lot of them did not require that you have to have a certain amount of hours. They just strongly recommended that you did. But one of the things that I did was that my program had a EMT program at my undergrad, and so I was able to do EMT shifts while at school, and so I was able to get a lot of hours doing that.
EMT meaning?
Emergency medical technician.
Okay. I'm just trying to keep this as simple as possible so it'll reach a wider audience. So to become an EMT, did you have to take a separate course, or was this all built in your undergrad?
I had to take a separate course, so I took one in the summer in between my freshman and sophomore year of college, and I got certified, and I was able to join the program at my college then following that.
Okay. So in between, you were working as an EMT?
Yes, so following my certification, I was able to work while in school. So we would do 14-hour shifts with the fire department across the street from our campus.
That would have been demanding, having a job and going to school.
It was a good amount of work, but it kind of worked out that our EMT shifts were from 6 p.m. until 8 a.m. So we would eat dinner at the fire station, sleep while we could, and when there weren't any calls, we could at least do homework and study. So it made it a little more manageable. Did
your grades suffer because of your work?
I was still able to keep up with my coursework.
Okay, great. All PA schools require an application essay, they require recommendation letters. What did you write in your essay, and what steps did you take to refine your essay, and who wrote your recommendation letters, and why did you ask them? I mean, it's a long question, but we can break it down if you need to.
Right. So first, for the application essay, I wrote about an experience I had while working as an EMT on my college campus that was just personal for me and kind of made me realize, oh, this is kind of why I want to be a PA in terms of helping with someone. And then Davidson has this thing called the Pre-Health Symposium, which is really helpful for anyone that's interested into going into any sort of health profession. And they actually have a kind of quote-unquote fake application that you go through during your junior or senior year if you want to apply. And they have people who will read your application essay for you. So they have a science professor, a student that's already gone through the like application before, and a English professor go through. So I had all of them read my application essay.
Okay, good. And who wrote it? Through my website, I'm offering free services like that, where I get essays from people who are applying to PA school. I read them through and critique them and give them some feedback. So I'm glad that was available for you as well.
That's really nice.
Who wrote your recommendation letters?
The PA who I shadowed while at my undergrad wrote one of my recommendation letters. I'd been shadowing him for about 2.5 years. I had a nurse practitioner.
So he knew you well. It's not like you just went and saw him for 3 months and then he asked for a recommendation letter.
No, I shadowed him. I tried to go twice a week for about 4 hours, and that was for about 2.5 years before COVID happened and kind of interrupted stuff. So I had him. I had a nurse practitioner who I had also shadowed for a long time, and I knew even before I went to undergrad, so she knew me quite well. And then I had the head of our pre-med department at Davidson write my last recommendation letter. I'd worked with her again since I was a freshman at Davidson, so she knew me pretty well.
So they gave you solid recommendation letters based on, they know you. One of my biggest pet peeve is when I read through applications that somebody's written a recommendation letter for, they've known him for 2 months or 3 months. And I think it's best to get recommendation letters from people who actually know you really well and can speak for you on your behalf.
Yes, yeah, that's what I really wanted to. People who had seen me not only in terms of I want to go to PA school, but also in different aspects and like knew me for all different facets of life.
Okay. What was the most challenging aspects of the application process?
I think just being organized with everything, just because with PA school, so many different programs require so many different things, where maybe there's one program that you want to apply to and they just require this one class that you haven't taken yet, and trying to figure that out was kind of stressful, and just making sure you meet all the requirements since it's not as standardized.
What particular qualities or skills you believe made you a strong candidate for PA school?
I think being organized was a first one, just kind of making sure that I gave myself all the opportunities that I knew I wanted to go to PA school, and it wasn't something where I had a half-baked decision like, oh, I want to go to PA school. So I think I provided myself with ample opportunities to try different things and realize, hey, I tried research, it's not for me, and then I tried having patient experience, this was for me. And I think also just being pretty resilient, because it's not an easy profession to be in, and when you're working in healthcare in general, you go through sometimes difficult situations, and just knowing how to manage and deal with those emotions that come along with it.
Okay. Well, it looks like you've done a pretty good homework about the profession before you applied, because a lot of people fail to do that, and I see them get burnt out in a year or two. So it is good to get to know the profession, and you shadowed a PA for 2 years. That's very good. How many programs did you apply? How many interviews did you get? And how did you prepare for the PA interview process?
Okay. So I applied to 12 PA programs, and I got interviews for 7 of them.
Okay.
And then for the interview process, my undergrad again had an interviewing service that you could go through the Career Center for, so I found that really helpful.
Okay. So Angelina, you applied to 12 PA programs. Of the hundreds and hundreds of PA programs, how did you narrow your list to 12? What was your thought process?
Well, I think part of it, like we had discussed, since I went straight in from undergrad and I did not have as many hours, it was already kind of limited for me. So I had a little over 500 hours. So I already kind of started my search limited, where I could only apply to programs that required at least 500 hours of healthcare experience or less.
Okay.
And so then when I kind of looked at all of those schools, I kind of focused on the mission statement of each program. Location did kind of play a part for me. There were certain areas where I would have preferred to go to school versus maybe I didn't want to go to school, and just kind of also their PANCE pass rates I think was really big for me, because I wanted to make sure that I was going to a program that was going to properly prepare me to pass and become a PA.
Okay. Did you have to take your GRE to apply for a PA school?
Yes, I took my GRE before PA school because a lot of programs were requiring it, and so I figured it would be good to have.
Okay. And some program is optional?
Some programs it was optional.
Can you explain the PA application process fairly in detail for all the pre-PAs out there? Because you said you applied to 12 PA programs, and it kind of get expensive applying individually to each programs.
Right, so kind of similar to when you're applying for undergrad, PA school does have a centralized application called the CASPA, which stands for the Centralized Application for Physician Assistants.
Okay.
And so since it is a centralized application, you don't have to resubmit it to each school. You can just choose which schools you're applying to, so that makes it a little easier.
Okay, so you submit all the materials to the CASPA, and then you pick the programs you want to apply to, and they send the applications to them?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Can you explain the interview process itself and what questions did they ask you in the interview?
It definitely depends on the program. I know different schools have different models. Some of them have an MMI, which I think takes you kind of through specific scenarios. None of my interviews were like that, so mine were much more just kind of asking some questions, trying to get to know your personality, what makes you interested in the profession. I maybe did get one or two questions more so about how you work with other people in terms of teamwork.
Okay. And were they Zoom interviews or were they in-person interviews?
They were all Zoom because this was right in the middle of COVID, so no one was doing anything in person.
Okay. Was it more challenging, you think, than it would have been in person?
I personally think it was maybe easier just because you can do it from the comfort of your own home, so you feel slightly less stressed than kind of being in person, I think.
Probably the cost factor also applies instead of you traveling to all these programs.
Yes, that would make it a lot more difficult, especially since I applied a little all over the place, so trying to go to 7 interviews would have been hard.
Okay, but sitting on the other side, I can tell you I'd rather prefer to meet a person face to face rather than on a screen because it's hard to judge a person from a screen far away. So certainly I felt handicapped when I was interviewing people for my programs. I would rather see them in person.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah. How many programs, you applied to 12 programs?
Yes.
How many programs accepted your application and offered you a spot in their program?
2 programs.
2 programs. Which are they?
Chatham University and then Texas Tech University.
And which one did you pick and why?
I went to Texas Tech University for PA school, and I chose it mainly because I really liked the mission of the program, and when I was actually going through the interview process, I really appreciated just how the professors spoke about the culture that was at the campus.
Okay. Okay. Did you visit the campus before you joined or?
I wasn't able to.
It was all remote?
Yeah.
It's a newer generation, I guess. How many PA students were in your class? How many came with prior healthcare experience?
There were 55 of us total, and I would say probably 90% of them came with prior healthcare experience. Most people had taken a gap year or 2. I think there were about 3 to 4 of us that came straight from undergrad.
So it was mixed age and mixed prior healthcare experience.
There were a few people, who this was their second career, a few people who took 1 or 2 gap years, and everything in between.
Okay. Back in the day when I went to PA school, almost 80% of my class were second careers in healthcare. So now the trend is kind of shifting the other way. We see a lot of younger people into the profession early on. So Angelina, you told me that your class was 55 and there was a mixed bag of people who had a second career, somebody with a lot of healthcare experience, some fresh out of school. How did you guys get along through a hectic didactic year? And talk to me about the dynamics of the class.
I think everyone got along pretty well for the most part. I think we're all really supportive of one another and wanted everyone to succeed, which was really nice. Like, everyone felt comfortable talking to anyone in the program if they needed to. Okay.
Interesting, because that's the common theme I hear from almost everybody I talk to, graduate from PA school, and that certainly was the experience for me as well. I went to Wayne State University PA program in Detroit, Michigan, and our class was a mixed bag as well, with a lot of people with healthcare experience, some older, some second career, and some people fresh out of PA school, and we all got along very well, and we shared our strengths and weaknesses. We helped each other out. I had a classmate who was very good, was an exercise physiology major, and she worked in a cardiac unit, and she knew EKGs like the back of her hand, and she used to help people who had tough time with EKGs. I was a physical therapist before I went to PA school. I helped in the orthopedic department and the orthopedic unit, and we had people from all walks of life who helped us get through the didactic year. It's a competition to get into PA school, but once you're in the classroom, we all the camaraderie is very, very good, and it's much needed to be successful and pass through.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot, so it's nice to have people right there that can support you and understand what you're going through while in school.
Okay. Talk to me about your experience in PA school. What was your didactic year like, and what was your clinical year like?
So my didactic year was 15 months long. The first 3 months were kind of getting you into like the anatomy, phys, pharm, and I would say that was the most difficult for most people in my program, just because you're getting adjusted to being in PA school and the pace of that. And then after that, it got a little bit easier, and we started going more into our clin med classes, clinical skills classes, and doing OSCEs, that sort of thing.
What is OSCE?
The OSCE is like the standardized patient encounters that you have. So you go into a room, they give you a brief amount of information about the patient, and you kind of have to do your own H&P physical exam and kind of come up with an assessment and plan for that patient based on those symptoms they're presenting with.
Okay, so the first year is just didactic. You're not going to any clinical. You're in the classroom morning 8 to 5?
Correct. Yes. It depends again on the day. Like sometimes, maybe you only have a half day of classes, so then you can use the other half to study or just kind of take a break and relax. A lot of workshops, so learning how to suture, doing different injections, things like that.
What do you expect to be the 8 to 5?
Yes.
As a didactic here. And you're off the weekends?
Yes.
Okay. And the lectures are taught by
mainly PAs or some physicians. Most of them are still practicing, so they do part-time at the school, and then some of them just fully instruct.
Okay. And during clinical second year, during clinical, you're off from the school campus. You were on rotations and...
Yes,
okay.
Yes. So we had 8 different rotations, so some of them were core rotations where we had to take them, and then we got one elective.
Okay. What was your elective?
Orthopedic surgery.
And why did you pick that as your elective?
Part of it was because the PA who I shadowed back in undergrad was an orthopedic PA, so I had some prior experience in it and I enjoyed it. And I knew that there were several orthopedic clinics where I had my rotations, so I would have a good chance of getting it for my elective.
Okay. Once you graduated, what did you have to do to become a practicing PA?
Well, first at my program, to even graduate, you had to take something called the EOC, which is the end of curriculum exam. And so you needed to pass that to be able to graduate from PA school. And then once you graduated from PA school, you take the PANCE, which is the national certifying exam to actually practice as a PA.
Okay.
And then once you pass that, you can then start applying for your licensure in whatever state you want to work in, getting your DEA license, things like that.
Okay, so you have your didactic year, and the didactic year is broken down into systems and different semesters.
Yes.
Right? And they deal with all the body systems. And you take an exam for each at the end of each system.
Yes.
And then you have your clinical year, and you go on your rotations, and then you come back to take exams at the end of each rotation. So how does that?
You take an exam at the end of each rotation. You don't have to come back to campus necessarily to do it. We had campuses in different locations, so you could take it from home or you could take it from a campus if you wanted to.
Okay. So lots of exams during the clinical didactic year, lots of exams during the clinical year, and then when you finish, you take another national board exam, and then you're out to practice. Lots of exams, a lot of studying. How long did you have to wait after you graduated to get a job?
I would say it was about a month and a half in between.
Okay. And is that you had to wait to be eligible to take your national certifying exam, or is that of choice?
I took my national exam about 3 weeks after graduating from PA school.
You didn't waste any time, did you?
No,
you just
I
went
was
straight
ready.
through.
It was fresh in my brain.
Makes sense. So you've come a full circle now. You were a pre-PA, and then you were a PA student, and now you're a certified PA. Talk to me about the transition of each phase. How did you grow, and how did you are now in the phase you're working in the Department of Neurosurgery at Duke Hospital? So talk to me about these phases from pre-PA to now.
I think one of the biggest things is just learning how to grow and learn better, if that makes sense. I think the way that I studied in undergrad was completely different from how I studied during my didactic year in PA school to then even clinical year. And kind of taking what I learned in PA school and now applying it as a practicing PA has been something new as well. It's also been nice because when you're actually practicing, you have, your coworkers and fellow people to kind of bounce ideas off and learn from as well, which I think is really helpful because when you're in school, a lot of the times you're answering questions, for a test, which can make it a little harder to think outside of the box.
Okay. Well, congratulations on becoming a PA.
Yeah, thank you.
Where do you see yourself from 5 years from now?
Hopefully still working in neurosurgery. I really want to, focus on that and be as best as I can be. I also do have an interest in teaching, so maybe at that point I would feel comfortable enough to maybe work as an adjunct professor at a PA program nearby.
Okay. Oh, lofty goals. And you've proven your potential to achieve all your dreams. Okay. So you had very limited healthcare experience. You are fresh out of PA school, and you're working in a surgical specialty. What did you do to prepare yourself for the interview? And how did it go through landing a job in a subspecialty in neurosurgery after PA school?
I made sure that I understood the description of the job really well and understanding kind of what my scope of practice would be. And I found that it kind of fit my goals as a PA. And so I just kind of focused on that. And in terms of the interview, I just made sure I was showing them who I am as a person and that we would get along and what my strengths were and how I could fit in and help the team.
Great. It is, you're right, it is a team approach. Working as a PA is definitely a team model, and especially if you're in an academic situation in a center, you're working with fellow PAs, you're working with MD residents who are training, you're working with the attending surgeons, nurses, therapists, all sorts of stuff. So healthcare delivery is a team model, and I think PAs fit really well. And they're not only team players, but they also hold leadership positions. So I wish you the very best and hope to see you as a leader very soon.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.